When should I get a Roth and how do I go about it is a question I get all the time as a financial educator. So before we get into it, let's define what a Roth IRA is. Now, IRA just stands for Individual Retirement Account. So whenever you hear that acronym at the end of an account type, it just means Individual Retirement Account, an account that's meant to help you in retirement. Roth is actually just the last name of the Senator, William Roth, who led the creation of the Roth IRA. So that's pretty much it. It's some dude's last name plus IRA. Now, to understand when you should invest in a Roth, it's important to understand the benefits of a Roth. The first major benefit is that a Roth grows tax-free, meaning any money that you contribute into the Roth is going to grow over time and you're not going to have to pay taxes on that money. That's a massive benefit because if you have a taxable brokerage account, you have to pay taxes on any of the investment gains that you've had. The second benefit of a Roth IRA is that you get tax-free withdrawals in retirement. So what exactly does that mean? The easiest way to explain this is to compare it to a 401k, which many of you probably already have. You might have a 401k through your employer, or if you're self-employed, you might have a solo 401k. Either way, with a 401k, you're making pre-tax contributions. That means that the money that you're putting into your 401k this year is actually reducing your income for the year so that you don't have to pay as many taxes this year. But when you withdraw that money in retirement from your 401k, you will have to pay taxes on that money. With a Roth IRA, you're paying taxes now. So the amounts that you're contributing to your Roth are after-tax contributions, which means that you've already paid tax on that money. So when you withdraw your distributions from your Roth in retirement, you don't have to pay taxes on that money. And what's great about that is if we know one thing from history, taxes go in typically one direction, up. So if you can have two separate accounts, a 401k that you use to reduce your taxable income now and have that grow tax-free, and you have a second account that you're using that's not reducing your taxable income this year, but you're getting tax-free withdrawals in retirement, you're getting the best of both worlds with both. Which leads me to another question I get all the time. Should you have both? Absolutely. Having both a 401k and a Roth is super valuable for long-term planning and for your retirement. So back to the question at hand, when should you invest in a Roth? First of all, I'm going to assume that you have an emergency fund of at least 3 months of living expenses, somewhere safe in a high yield savings account or elsewhere that's not actively invested, that you know that money's going to be there when you need it. The second thing I want to assume is that you have paid off most or all of your high interest rate debt, and that's any debt over 7%. The market returns about 8% over time if you subtract for inflation. So any high interest that you have above 7%, you want to pay that off. But if you're paying lower interest rate debt, that kind of debt is okay to have. And at that point, you should be investing. Now we get to where you should be investing. If you have a 401k with your employer, and if they have a match, meaning they'll match your contributions up to a specific percentage, you definitely have to take that first. That's not just free money, that's part of your compensation. So that's the first thing that you should fund is your 401k, at least up until the match. Now, this is where there might be some debate. Some people might say that you should max out your 401k first and then open a Roth. My preference is to reach the match of your 401k and then open up a Roth. Then if you've fulfilled all the contributions you can in a Roth, you can go back to the 401k. Why is that? A couple of reasons. Number one, 401k fees can be really high. Not always, but sometimes they're super high. If your fees are high and it's reducing the returns of your investment, in a Roth, that's a usually very inexpensive account, and especially if you're investing in index funds, you're not going to be paying much money at all in fees in your Roth. So if your 401k fees are high, that's a good reason to just take the match and then move the rest of your investments to a Roth. The other reason why a Roth is great is what we just talked about. Those tax-free withdrawals in retirement, that's huge. You don't want to have to pay taxes on all the money that you're using for retirement. So if you're investing with a Roth, that's a great way to reduce your taxes in the future. Now, the contribution limits of a Roth are $6,000 for 2022. So once you max that out, you might want to go back and max out your 401k, but at least take the match first. Speaking of contribution limits, let's talk about the rules of a Roth IRA. The maximum amount you can contribute to a Roth IRA is $6,000. Now, the good news is you can contribute that money up until the day taxes are due for the previous year. So for example, if it's April 1st, 2022, you can contribute up to $6,000 for the 2021 year. You have until April 15th to do it. So if you're just getting started with your Roth and you have enough money to invest in a Roth, you can actually invest right now, since it's January of 2021, you can actually invest $6,000 in your Roth for 2021 and $6,000 for 2022. Now, the actual amount that you're allowed to contribute does depend on your income. So if you make less than $129,000 a year, or your adjusted gross income that you file on your taxes is less than $129,000 per year, then you can contribute the full $6,000. If you make more than that, up to $144K per year, the amount that you can contribute to the Roth goes down. And then once you're making over $144,000 per year, you can't contribute anymore. For people filing jointly, you can't put any money into a Roth once your income together is $214,000 or more. To recap, if you have a 3-month emergency fund, if you've paid down most of your high interest debt, and you're matching a 401k, that's a great time to open up a Roth IRA. Now the question becomes, where do you open it? There's only hundreds of options of where you can open a Roth, so this can be really overwhelming. So I'm going to give you 2 options to start with. Now, there are robo-advisors that will actually help choose investments for you. It's a super easy way to get started investing. Places like Betterment or Ellevest are the types of brokerages that will actually select investments for you based on a questionnaire you fill out. That's one way to open up a Roth. The second way you can do it, which is, in my opinion, just as easy and free, is setting up an account with national trusted brokerage like Charles Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard. Those are all great options. You can open up a Roth relatively quickly. They'll ask you for some basic information. Then you're off to the races. Now, this last bit is super important because I've seen people make this mistake before. Please don't make this mistake. It makes me super sad. People will contribute to their Roth and they'll put the money in their account and they're so excited that they open their Roth. They've got their contributions going, except their money is not invested in anything. And basically at that point, it's a bad savings account. So you want to make sure that you select investments for your Roth so your money is actually growing. If you're new to investing, I recommend investing in index funds. An index fund is a group of stocks that tracks a particular index. Index is just a fancy name for list. So for example, if you've ever heard of Standard & Poor 500, the S&P 500, that's the 500 largest US stocks by market cap. You can very easily buy an S&P 500 index fund. They're super cheap, and now you've bought all the largest stocks in the US. It's a great place to start if you're new to investing. So make sure you look into index funds and invest in index funds that have low fees. Those fees are typically going to be around 0.04 or 0.03%. And when I say fees, what I mean is the expense ratio of the fund. The expense ratio is the operating cost to manage the fund. So other types of mutual funds that you might have heard of before, mutual funds are usually actively managed, so they're going to cost more. An index fund is a really easy, passive way to get started investing. It'll save you a lot of money in the long run, and it's a better option for most people. Another option you could start with for your Roth is a target date index fund. A target date fund is a fund where you don't have to really do anything at all, and it is based on the target date of your retirement. So the risk allocation will adjust depending on how close you are to retirement. My one word of caution would be to make sure you look for a target date index fund. Target date funds tend to have higher fees. It's definitely better than nothing. So if you want to just do that, open a Roth, put it in a target date fund, that is absolutely better than not doing anything at all and is a really good option for lots of people. If you want to get a little bit more into it, I highly suggest looking into index funds first. Comment below if you have any more questions about when, where, and how to open a Roth IRA. Be sure to click the link below to learn more ways you can learn about retirement funds, investing, and a whole lot more.